Hey folks, how's it going? Fon here. I'm about to try an interesting, unusual, different project. I have a little gig tonight with guitar and mandolin, and I've no mandolin case. So I've been meaning to make one for ages, and I'm going to try to build a quick, easy, cheap mandolin case. Not sure if I'll succeed, but here goes. I'll give it a lash, and let's see how I get on. So I've gathered my materials. Here is said mandolin. Here is a load of foam sheets. If you've watched any of my other vids, you know I use them a lot. Here is a tenner's worth of sponge that I just got in a carpet shop. And underneath here I have a bunch of iron-on laminate sheets. And here I have a couple of clasps and handles. This cost £5. This cost £10. So I'm hoping to do it all fairly cheap and quick. Let's see how I get on. So first things first, I'm going to cut a shape something like that. And then with a bit of luck, I'll be able to get two out of the one piece of foam. And I need to leave enough size on the edges to put foam walls going up like that as well. Okay, I'll get onto it. 5 minutes later, I've got my first piece cut. I'll just show you a couple of the things that I did to get that. One is that I used a proper right angle. I drew a centre line first, and then I used a proper right angle here and there to keep it all equilateral. And then I left enough room. And see, I drew roughly where the head comes to and where the strap button at the bottom comes to. And I left enough room all the way around for more pieces of this style of foam. It's 2 centimetres thick, so I left a 2 centimetre gap all the way around. There we go. The top and the bottom outer pieces of the case are now cut. And of course, use something like that. Safety first whenever you're using a scalpel. Okay, I got out these foam pieces that I just bought in the carpet shop a little while ago. They are 2.5 centimetres thick. Maybe by the time there's been a little bit of compression, it'll be around 2 centimetres. So I've just put this 2 centimetre board here and this here, and I'm going to use that to figure out a cross piece of foam with a little cutout for the neck here. So using my trusty protractor, I figured out that this angle here going in is roughly 10 degrees. And using my scalpel and the metal ruler, I roughly cut that to 10 degrees. Did my best. I guess it doesn't need to be perfect because the foam is very compressible. And so long as I'm able to glue it onto the sides shortly. So there we go. Now I guess I'll make a little indentation or hole here for the neck of the mandolin. And here we are with a little cutout in the foam for the neck of the mandolin. Pretty pleased with that. Okay, a little bit of luck is that it's actually just about exactly the right size. So I'm drawing on the outline of this. And then once I've drawn on the outline, I'm going to go in 2 centimetres smaller to make room for the walls. And that should be the correct size. And then I'll just have to do a cutout for this cross piece, and that should be it. Very happy with that. I now need to cut a cross for this cross piece here. Here we are so far. Very pleased with the way that's coming along. I need to cut this down a little bit lower because it's all just fitting exactly tightly. I want to go down a bit lower, and then I'll put sponge underneath the neck. So I just noticed here, this wall here only needed to be 9 centimetres high to be able to hold the neck and have the sponge under the mandolin. However, little problem is that I've just noticed the top of this bridge is actually 10 centimetres. So I'm going to make the side walls 11 centimetres for safety. The height of the side walls, I'm going to make them 11 just to be safe. I'll figure out the rest as I go. But before I cut the side walls, I forgot to mention that what I'm going to try is a quick, easy, cheating, simple method of strengthening the case, at least on the inside, is I'm going to use laminating sheets, like these laminating sheets here, which you should be able to buy in any art or school supply shop. I'm going to iron it on. I'll have to make sure not to go too hot, but here I've got a piece of laminate. I've cut in the shape here. I'll fill in these little shapes here, and I will probably do much more strengthening on the outside, but just for the inside, that's my quick, easy cheat method that I'm going to try. This middle bit is glued on with the trusty hot glue, and laminate, more dull side down, glossy side out, has been ironed on with a standard iron at about roughly half heat. Run some experiments yourself, find out what's the hottest you can safely run it at without it going wrong. And there we go, the laminate is on. Okay, this is a good while later on. I've done a lot of cutting. It was all quite difficult. This is just resting in place for now. It's not glued. And you know, for these angles, I don't have any special technique. I just put my scalpel at an angle when I'm cutting. You know, I use the metal ruler and I put my hand at an angle like that to cut in a rough angle like that. And like that. You can see I needed to do a number of angles. Some of them I got wrong, and some of them I had to go again. I had to repair that. So the first piece, the bottom, is hot glued on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put that like that. I'm going to go in with bamboo skewers, skewer in from the bottom, possibly glue them as well, and then cut them off flush, and that will add a lot more structural, probably about 3 of them. That'll add a lot more structural, and I'll do that all the way along here as well. So bamboo skewers plus hot glue. So the technique I'm using is I'm just putting that in temporarily, about a couple of centimetres. Then I pull it out. I'm going to put hot glue on that, push it in. There'll be a blob of hot glue, and this will be poking out like this. Then what I do is I grab these, cut it off about half a centimetre or a centimetre, and then push it in the rest of the way. So here's one I did earlier, and you get a perfect flat finish with a little bit of hot glue, but it's completely flush and it's glued in position. And with that being a long piece there, I'm not sure that I'm going to have time to hot glue it. So I'm choosing to use a different glue for that bit, a foam safe glue. This particular one is called MS40. Okay, I'm finishing up work for today. Very, very pleased with that. I'm not going to try to rush it and finish it today because it's coming along very, very nicely. That's all glued into place. There's the lid, which I'll work on tomorrow. So here I am on day 2 of the building of the mandolin case. And yes, I realised yesterday there's no way I can do that in one day. So what I'm going to do is a nice piece of plywood here. I think it's 4mm. That's going to go there. And I'm going to prepare another piece of plywood for here. This is going to go on that. And that's going to be something like that. And that like that. Handle and clasp for there and there. So I'll get shaping and gluing and cutting. Also, these are blind nuts, and I'm going to use them on the underside. On the underside of this piece of plywood, I'll use these. Okay, it's a few hours later. Mistakes were made, but I think I've recovered from them. Those blind nuts were really a bit too big for that, and the holes weren't in quite the right places. So I aborted that and just put normal nuts and bolts in. And 2 other quick things. This still isn't attached on, and I only used hot glue to attach all this. I didn't quite trust it fully, so I've given myself a little bit of an insurance policy, and I'll cover them in sponge near the end. Okay, so the good news is I'm about to install the hinges. The bad news is it's confession time. I'm using a slightly naughty technique. I'm just putting the bolt straight through and into the nuts. They're not blind nuts because I don't have the correct size at the moment. And I'm hoping that this job, once it's glued in, is just going to stay working for many, many years. If necessary, I'll take it apart and open it up. But I'm hoping that, just with a bit of luck, I can just hot glue these into the foam and that should be the end of it. And if not, I'll pay the penalty. So really that should have the proper size of blind nuts and maybe smaller nuts and bolts. But let's see how I go with this. Well, it's a minor miracle. It's coming along very well. The hinges are actually installed. And that clasp does fit. There's a view of the hinges. So they're just hot glued in. I hope that's good enough. Let's see. My final jobs are I'm going to get some polyester dress lining. And I'm going to get wood glue. I'm going to slightly water the wood glue to make it an easier consistency. And I'm going to cover the whole thing now in polyester and slightly watered wood glue. And before I do that, I need to decide how much of a curve, if any, I'm going to give on these edges, or if I'll just leave it with a sharp edge. So before I do any of the final finishing jobs of painting and covering, just like to point out, yeah, it actually works quite nicely. I'm going to need to put sponge there, and there, but I'm going to do that after painting and covering. And but I have to say, as you can see, it actually works quite nicely. Yeah, the weighting there is, the balance is quite nice, and mandolin is kept safe. I'll need to put a sponge actually on the top of that as well at the end. So there's a lot left to be done, but it works. And the rounding that I decided to do was just a quick rounding of each corner is rounded off, rather than doing all these edges. And it's a little bit rough, but it's a homemade quick job, so I'm fairly happy with it. The reason I've favoured doing this method is I'm learning about it and experimenting with it with air modelling at the moment, using polyester dress lining material, which is very similar to ultralight fiberglass, but it's much easier to find. It's much cheaper and much more easily available. And wood glue. Just a decent wood glue with a little bit of water in it to make it more manageable, and I'm going to give that a try, and I hope to be using the same technique on upcoming model planes and boats very soon. So here's my piece of fabric for the top, cut a little bit big, about 2 centimeters too big all the way around, enough to go around each edge. And here's my mix of glue, which is roughly 1 part water to 2 parts glue. I just want to give you an idea of the texture and the consistency. So it's just very slightly dripping off the brush, and it's going on like that. That seems to be about the right consistency. If it's too thick, it's difficult to spread it, and I'll put the fabric onto that in just a moment. So I'm halfway through putting on the first layer of polyester fabric lining, and I'm just going to paint that on now using my watery mix. I'm going to put extra on and smooth that in, and hopefully that should give us some good results. I'll be honest, that was a bit difficult. That's the first time I've tried the polyester and wood glue technique. It's absolutely doable, but it is a bit difficult, and next time I'll know that you really do need to have it ironed before you attempt to put it on. I went round the edges, something like that, and I'll have to go back and fix up the corners at some other point. Here we are another day later, and that is actually the bottom of it. Now look, the underside was done yesterday. That's come along quite nicely. So see, can we get more of a view of that? So that's coming along okay. I still need to go along and repair bits of the edges, but I feel when I did the top this time, I had a much better idea of how to kind of fold the edges. You put one edge under the other, and I had a slightly stronger mix of glue, and I did the corners a bit better, not perfectly, but again at the end I'll neaten everything up. So now all that's left to be done is all around the edges. Here I am many hours later. As usual, that was much harder than I expected it to be. I've got that piece of foam wedged in there to hold it open so that it doesn't glue itself shut. It's done. Okay, here I am on the final bit of the structural stuff. Tomorrow is paint day and it'll be finished then. It's 90 to 95% finished at the moment. Today, this morning, I have put some iron on laminate covering just to strengthen up the insides there, and a little bit there, and there. I discovered that with an iron you can actually flatten out some of the little air pockets and things that weren't too nice. I've ironed them out to some extent. Any bits that were not quite right, for example, I think it was in there, I sort of slit where there was a little air pocket and then ironed them over, and I'm about to cover them with little strips of acrylic, and I'm going to use neat wood glue. For the corners I made 4 little custom pieces like this. I figured to go something like this. That's going to go across at a 45. There's a slit here so that I can then go like that. Okay, here I am with the penultimate build video of the Mandolin case. Penultimate because all I need to do is figure out what's the best glue for me to use for sponge and glue the sponge in tomorrow. I might or might not spray paint the sponge red and spray everything else with black spray paint. This sponge here is all still loose, it's just placed in, it's cut to shape. I'm delighted to announce, there we go, another project successfully completed. The Mandolin now has a case. Ta-da! That's sponge, which I spray painted red. The Mandolin is very snug in there, I'm very happy indeed with that. I'm sure there are lots of other better ways you could build cases, but for now I'm super happy with that. And I'm even going to try to build, for my next project, I'm going to build a new case for my radio control transmitter. Link in description to that. Thank you very much for watching. Feel free to like, share and subscribe. All the best. God bless. Bye.